Britain's top police officer tells protesters on all sides to stay away from the streets of the capital this weekend ahead of more planned demonstrations.
Please express your voice in a different way and don't come physically to the streets of London.
Support bubbles coming to effect across England today, reuniting friends and families who were cut off during lockdown.
Well, I know I'm just going to burst into tears. I know I am. Getting quite choked up just thinking about it now because it's been so long.
No foot guards, no carriage ride and no fly past. How the Queen's official birthday will be a socially distant celebration this year.
Good morning. The Premier League backs the Black Lives Matter movement as they announce the slogan will replace the players' names on the backs of their shirts for the first round of fixtures.
And look at the front pages. The Times says the Prime Minister is going to aim to lead Britons back to the shops next week to help the economy. It says that Mr Johnson is planning a public visit to a high street to try to reassure shoppers ahead of non-essential retailers being allowed to open in England.
The Scottish Daily Mail reports that hard-hit businesses are demanding the 2-metre rule be cut to help rescue the economy, as SNP ministers fear the financial damage for Scotland could be even worse than the rest of the UK.
The Daily Mirror reports that the Queen is planning to honour key workers who've helped the country during the pandemic with a garden party.
So there's been a lot of talk, hasn't there? And Michael will be chatting to us a little later on about how sport is, how it's adapting to the current situation. And in some ways, some sports are able to have maybe the odd game, the odd match.
Haven't you been watching old rugby matches?
Yeah, and there's been a lot of play out of old matches.
And football matches.
And then in some individual sports, like golf, for example, there have been people playing off against each other. It's become sort of televised. So what do you do about a big tournament? So Wimbledon, obviously, not happening. So in terms of the BBC coverage, of course, it's a huge... Lots of people who don't necessarily watch tennis, for example, or maybe even other sports, they love the ritual of Wimbledon. They like watching it. So what does what a broadcaster do to replace it? So the BBC is now talking through how they're going to do it, and they're going to play a lot of old matches that have embraced some of the classics over the years that people have loved, looking at Boris Becker's games, John McEnroe's games. So, I mean, obviously, they've got a huge archive of matches. It's not the same, obviously, but it'll give people a bit of Wimbledon, sort of. So it's something, isn't it?
But you know what? When in any other time, when would people take the time to kind of relish those brilliant matches and go back and watch them? You wouldn't. So you kind of see it as an opportunity, perhaps, to.
People intending to protest in London today will have to be off the streets by 5 o'clock this afternoon.
The Metropolitan Police says it's put conditions in place which apply to all demonstrators, including left and right-wing groups, that have notified authorities of their intention to rally.
Senior officers have again urged people to stay away while coronavirus rules remain in place.
Hundreds of black and minority ethnic doctors in the UK have told the BBC that they're still waiting for a coronavirus risk assessment. Guidance issued by NHS England at the end of April recommended that staff who are at greater risk should be assessed. Similar recommendations were made in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. 94% of doctors who've died with coronavirus have come from non-white backgrounds.
British Airways has been described as a national disgrace by a group of MPs over its handling of its staff during the coronavirus pandemic. The airline is planning to make as many as 12,000 redundancies and ask some remaining staff to take large pay cuts. The company says it's doing everything it can to sustain the maximum number of jobs through unprecedented times.
The Queen's official birthday will be marked with a ceremony instead of the annual Trooping the Colour parade as the coronavirus lockdown continues. It's only the second time in her 68-year reign that the parade in London hasn't gone ahead. Instead, Windsor Castle will host a ceremony with a small number of Welsh guardsmen and military musicians. Social distancing rules will be in place for those who are marching.